Welcome to Adventure Freaks, a podcast on living abroad on a budget.
All right, today I'm with my new friend, Isabella Michea. That's correct?
Yes.
All right, Isabella, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Isabella is your pure young artist who lives in the place I've been dying to interview somebody in for a long time, and I'm so grateful that she accepted my invitation to be on the podcast. She lives in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And it is an amazing place. It's a beautiful country, but she's also from another beautiful country. Isabella, you are from Santiago, Chile.
Yes.
Which is, so you are like, you're from South America, and two really amazing, beautiful destinations. She is, she's very, very colorful, and she's politically active, and she is studying to go, and she's becoming a beautician. She's going to beauty school. She's also studying to become a teacher, a daycare teacher. She studied film and directing, and she's also a tattoo artist. So she's got a lot of stuff going on, and she takes awesome pictures, and we'll share some of your photos and stuff like that at the end of the podcast so people can see. But thanks again, Isabella, for being here. So tell me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. So tell me, what is it like to live in Buenos Aires, and tell us your journey. How did you find Buenos Aires, Argentina, from Santiago, Chile?
So actually, I never really liked living in Santiago. We actually, like, between people that don't like Santiago, we call it Santiasco. Like,
wow. Yeah.
So I've been saving to move for forever. I started saving when I was 15. I got an illegal job because you're not allowed to work until you're 18 over there. I was working legally, and
so you were doing that in Chile?
Yes. And
okay. Wow.
When I was in film school in Chile, one of my teachers was actually like, if you hate Chile so much, why don't you move to Argentina? And I was like, wow, I never really thought of that, even though my grandma is also from here. But I had never been to Buenos Aires. I've only been to other towns in Argentina. And he mentioned that university is free here, as well as healthcare. So
wow.
I had never known that. So after that conversation, I went straight back home, started investigating on how to move here, did all the paperwork in order to study here, which is a lot, but it's so worth it. And yeah, that's about it. He told me about it, and I was like, yes.
So the university and the healthcare is free in Argentina?
Yes, and it's actually really good. There's the university, the Buenos Aires University, and it's in the top 50 of schools in the whole world.
Wow.
They have amazing education and really good healthcare for it being free. I mean, I grew up in Chile, where to get free healthcare, it's not really a possibility.
Yeah.
Only if you have certain diseases you can
Sure.
access healthcare. And there's a really long waiting list, and people tend to be really aggressive in Chile as well, especially to women. So getting here,
is that why you hate it?
Yes, because there's a lot of discrimination towards minorities and women in particular. There's a lot of sexual harassment on the streets, to the point that some men masturbate in front of you on the public transport system.
So this is in Chile?
Yes.
In Santiago?
People don't do it.
Wow.
Yeah. People don't do anything to help another woman, because they see women as a thing, unless they're someone's daughter or someone's sister or someone's girlfriend.
I see. Do you feel, when you moved to Argentina, did you feel a difference right away, the way people treat women? You did? Okay.
Yeah, because in Santiago, I would step out of my house and I would get sexually harassed. Didn't matter how I was dressed. Obviously, that's not an excuse to sexually harass someone, but didn't matter what age I was. This started when I was about 12. So they harass girls, they harass women. And here, not only is the sexual harassment way, way less, but it's also, there's more of a sisterhood between women. I remember the one time that I got sexually harassed on the street, this girl ran to me, saw what was happening, ran to me and said, "Hey, friend," like pretending she knew me, and said, "Can I help you out?" And that had never happened in Santiago. So that was the first time that I was like, wow, I am really safe here.
Yeah.
Even if something did happen, there's a woman probably going to help me.
Yeah. Wow, that's great.
And honestly, Buenos Aires is one of the safest big cities that I've lived in. Like, of course, you can get robbed in certain neighborhoods. Of course, if you're like walking around with your cell phone and your wallet out, something might happen. But I've walked these streets at 6 a.m. going back from a party, and I felt completely safe. And also, like, people are really friendly, saying hello to each other all the time, singing on the street. Sometimes it can get a little bit annoying because Argentinians have this thing where they think that everybody wants to hear their opinion. So people talk to you on the street a lot. But yeah, it's almost like Sesame Street compared to Santiago. Santiago is a very dangerous city.
I have never heard that. That is so interesting. That experience. Now, you said your grandmother is from Argentina?
Yes, she lives in Santiago right now, but she is originally from Argentina. She actually met my grandpa in Bariloche when she was like on vacation. And I do have some like distant relatives that still live in Argentina, but I've only met them a couple times.
Gotcha. So you were pretty young when you moved to Buenos Aires then?
Yes, I was 19. I'm about to be 25 now.
Okay, and you didn't know anybody when you moved there?
No, I actually moved with my then boyfriend, now ex-boyfriend, and we lived together for about 6 months, and then we broke up. But since he didn't know any Spanish or very little Spanish, all of our friends were foreigners as well, mostly from Russia, and they chose his side of the story. So after we broke up, I didn't know anybody in the city. I was completely alone. And I moved to a big apartment with 6 other girls. And that's how I started meeting people, really. But I completely like moved to that place completely blind.
Yeah. So he spoke Russian?
No, he spoke English. He was
English.
Canadian.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So are there a lot of people that don't speak Spanish in Buenos Aires?
There's a surprising amount of people that don't know Spanish in Argentina.
Wow. And you can get by down there without speaking Spanish?
Yes, because there's so many immigrants that you can join a Facebook group or just meet people where you're staying. If you're staying in a hostel or like staying in a hotel or anything, you can meet people really easily that are from other places. And I feel like most people that travel know English. So yeah, it's not impossible to get by without knowing Spanish.
Okay, so what do you need? So for the viewers that are, interested in moving to Argentina, exploring Argentina like you have and possibly move there, what do they need to know? I mean, is there like a visa that you have to get, or to even get that like free healthcare and that free university, do you have to become a resident? What's the process?
So it's actually really easy to be an immigrant here because you can get here on a tourist visa. And if you overstay that visa, the only thing that you have to do is pay a fine when you get out of the country. Last time that I had to pay that fine, it was about $50.
Okay.
which is not a lot of money if you consider like moving somewhere, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a resident now, but when I first moved out here, I overstayed my tourist visa a couple times, and there was no issue at all, except for that fine whenever you leave the country.
Yeah.
Um, to study here, you do have to do some paperwork regarding your high school diploma. You have to validate your high school diploma in Argentina, basically. And to do that, it depends on each country. For me, it was like a lot of paperwork in Chile, and then making an appointment in Buenos Aires to come get all my papers stamped, basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so how long, when you stay on a tourist visa, how long do they give you? Is it 3 months, 6 months?
90 days.
90 days.
Mhm.
Okay. But it sounds like they don't make that big of a deal if you go beyond 90 days.
Yeah, no, they don't care at all. Like, it's not like in the US where if you overstay your visa, you might be facing serious jail time or even be locked in a cage
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
for a while. So, yeah, it's really, really easy to be an immigrant here. And in regards of the healthcare, I actually accessed when I first moved out here and I broke up with my boyfriend. I was so sad that like my immune system crashed and I had tonsillitis.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the hospital, and they not only let me stay for a whole night and gave me food and medicine and penicillin shot, all for free. They didn't ask any questions. They just asked for my name, an ID, and that was it. I was overstaying my tourist visa then, and they let me access all of that.
Wow.
Yeah, it was honestly a lifesaver. Like, I don't know what would have happened if I was in a country where I couldn't access all of that.
Yeah.
I remember when they gave me the prescription for the medicine, I was thinking like, oh my God, this is gonna be so expensive. And then I went to the pharmacy in the hospital, and they gave me the medicine, and they asked me to sign a few things, and then I said, how much do I owe you? And then the person working there started laughing, saying, it's free, baby.
Wow. So that's quite different than Santiago as well, Chile.
Yeah. Because in Santiago, to access free healthcare, you have to have a certain disease or a certain diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a really long waiting list. And the free healthcare that you access is not that great.
Mm-hmm.
And also, a big chunk of your salary usually goes to that. So it's not entirely free. Like
Yeah.
here, I don't pay any taxes right now, apart from rent and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's still free for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also get a an insurance at a hospital or wherever you like for about $60-$70 a month if you go to a really good hospital. And if you're young, I don't know what the case is if you're older or if you have pre-existing conditions.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when it comes to healthcare, it's so easy to access.
So, and are you paying per month on an insurance plan or?
I'm looking into it right now, but I haven't been
Okay.
for 4 years.
So if something happens, you're pretty much covered. Are people on a tourist visa? Would they be covered? Do you think? They
Yes.
would be.
Yeah, I was overstaying my visa, my tourist visa when I had tonsillitis. So I imagine that on a tourist visa you can also access it.
Okay. All right. So then so people can go, you can go to college for free. You can can you pursue like a master's degree for free?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Here, people value and cherish the right of education, because
Yeah.
it's a human right to be educated and to access education. But in most countries, we see it as something that you acquire, something that has a price.
Mm-hmm.
something that you invest in rather than something that you pursue out of completion of your person, you know?
Hmm. Okay. So tell us a little bit about the climate there. What is the climate like in Buenos Aires?
It's very humid, um, but it has one of the easiest winters, in my opinion. I lived in Santiago, as you mentioned before, and over there we get below zero.
Hmm.
And even sometimes we get a little bit of snow. But here it's like 15 degrees Celsius
Okay,
or
so it's
maybe 10
milder.
degrees Celsius. And yeah, it's really mild. And people here will tell you that it's so cold and they'll go out in puff jackets and fur coats. It's really funny to
Yeah.
me. Um, but it's really, really easy. And the summer can get a little bit hot. I'm really into hot weather, so I don't take an issue with that. For some people, it is a lot due to the humidity, but it gets to about the last few years with climate change and everything, it's gotten to like 30 something degrees, but it doesn't get hotter than 35, say.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So that sounds great, man. It sounds like the weather's almost perfect, really,
Yeah.
year
Something
round.
to, like, remember is that Buenos Aires is in Argentina. Buenos Aires is like very peculiar and very cosmopolitan and like um, resembles Europe.
Yes.
Some people call it the Paris of South America.
South America. Yeah.
I personally think my theory, or at least how I tell it, is that New York and Paris had a love child and left it in South America to be raised by the South Americans.
I love that. That's so like in living in Buenos Aires, because I've heard a lot of people say that too, like it's the Paris of South America. It's just gorgeous. It's beautiful. The architecture is gorgeous. There are a lot of Europeans there, and there were a lot of there was a huge exodus of Italians that moved there. You
Yeah.
probably know more than I know about that, but tell us what that experience is like, and what are the neighborhoods like? What's the vibe of Buenos Aires? Of people that are going to move there, what is it? What are they going to feel, and what are they going to experience?
It depends on what neighborhood you're in, because some neighborhoods can be a little bit more dangerous and more sketchy looking, with a lot of graffiti. There's a lot of graffiti everywhere. If you don't like graffiti, you're not going to like the city. But it's very artsy. The arts and culture are very loud here. Even if maybe some people aren't into it, there's so many events and so many effort from the city to get you into it that you see it everywhere. There's concert halls and there's huge theaters where they have beautiful musicals. I'd say that it's Broadway level musicals. Um, and it's also very inclusive when it comes to sexuality. I live in Palermo, which is like a very hip, young neighborhood, or at least the part in Palermo where I live, because Palermo has different parts. And it's so LGBTQ friendly. There's LGBTQ bars, there's even hair salons that are inclusive and that promote that, and there's even cafes that do that. So it's a very inclusive city when it comes to big cities in South America, because most of South America is very Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in Santiago, there's a lot of violence towards LGBTQ people. So I noticed that right away here.
What do you think the difference is? Coming from you've lived in both places. Why do you think there's such a vast difference? Because how far is Santiago from Buenos Aires?
About a 2-hour flight.
So it's really not that far. I mean, what
Yeah,
would that be if you could you drive it? How long would it take to drive?
I think it would take like 2 or 3 days if you drive
Okay,
and with time,
because you
if
got
you
the mountains.
do it, maybe you could do it in less time. But if you're like enjoying the ride and everything, I would say 2 to 3 days.
Sure, yeah. So what do you
Um,
think the difference is? I mean, why are people being more accepted in a place like Argentina as opposed to Chile?
because even though both countries had dictatorships in the 70s, Chile had the longest and bloodiest dictatorship in South America.
Hmm.
He had a fascist dictatorship with Augusto Pinochet as the dictator. And it only ended because the dictator allowed it to.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, it was a much shorter dictatorship and it ended because the people made it end.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that causes a really big difference. Also in Chile, everything you do is linked to a political belief.
Mm-hmm.
While here, you can get away with not knowing anything about politics and it's fine.
Yeah.
And also because the people got the dictatorship to end by protesting and moving and doing things, there's also a different attitude toward the dictatorship. When you go to museums about it or the Parque de la Memoria, which is a park of memories, there's some more hopeful feeling of let's not make this happen again. Let's celebrate freedom and justice and peace.
Mm-hmm.
While in Chile, if you go to those places, if you go to the few museums that there are, there's still so much sadness surrounding it, and it's still a very much open wound. And even until I was in the last year of high school, history books would still talk about the dictatorship as a military government rather than a dictatorship. Only when I was in my senior year of high school, they made it illegal to refer to it as that in history books, which makes a very, very big difference.
Sure. Yeah. Wow.
But it's also important to remember that, like I said, Buenos Aires is in Argentina, because I've heard that in the rest of Argentina, they're not as inclusive.
Okay. So you're saying so Buenos Aires isn't Argentina.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's almost like a separate entity.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels very different. It's very similar to Chile in that sense, because Santiago is also like a very modern city compared to the rest of Chile. The rest of Chile is just small towns,
Mm-hmm.
very rural, very isolated from the rest of Chile. They don't get a lot of attention from the government. I mean, there's some certain towns that don't even have hospitals to that point, or even have only one school. And it's the same here. It's all very centralized to the capital.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like where you're living at Palermo is a pretty cool place to live, and it's a pretty open and inclusive world that a lot of people enjoy going to.
Yes, it's Palermo, and I'd say Recoleta is also the other neighborhood that foreigners really enjoy. Recoleta is a little bit more like uppity and snobbish.
How do you say that? La Coleta?
Recoleta.
Recoleta. How do you spell that?
Recoleta.
Recoleta. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So we got two great neighborhoods in Argentina. All right.
Yeah, but you can also live downtown, and even though it's reminiscent of maybe what's that movie with Harrison Ford where he's a cop and there's robots and AI.
Oh, geez. I don't even know.
Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue, but it's very reminiscent of that. What's it called?
And they shot it in where did they shoot the movie that he was in?
I'm not sure. But it's like a near future reality with lots of neon signs and rain. It's really rainy here, which I personally love. Some people don't,
Is
but
is a Blade Runner?
Blade Runner, that's it.
Yeah. Okay.
Like my parents, when they came to visit me, because I used to live downtown with all those 6 other roommates, they would always say, "Oh, you're Blade Runner neighborhood."
Yeah. 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 Okay. So, all right. And so when people get when you first get to Buenos Aires and you're hanging out, so there's a couple neighborhoods you're saying that are they feel more inclusive and they're more open and receptive, and it's a very artsy city. What is the food situation like for people that go there and they are really, they're concerned about their expenses and they want to live there, but they want to go out and they want to eat at restaurants, but they don't want to spend a ton of money. What is a typical dish there? What are the foods of Argentina? I know that isn't there like a lot of beef? They eat a lot of like beef and meat
Yes, it's
all
all
over
the
Uruguay, Paraguay, Chile, and
yeah.
but
So
yeah,
you can get there's a big range of foods. You can get something as cheap as $3 empanadas, which are really tasty here and really good. Or you can go out and go to a fancy restaurant and still pay very little compared to US prices. I would say about $50 for a 2-people meal if it's a fancy restaurant.
Yeah.
I would say that the Italian food here is really good, and the ice cream is it's so good, and they sell it by the kilo, so you can get a lot of it and for really cheap.
Yeah.
You can get a kilo of ice cream, which is like a big tub like this, for about $5 if you want.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Italian food and gelato, because of there's so many Italians that live in Argentina.
Yes, and there's also a big community of Asian immigrants from Korea, China, and Japan. There's actually a whole Chinese neighborhood. It's not really big, but it's really kept as a Chinese neighborhood. So there's really good Chinese food over there. It's near Belgrano, which is also a neighborhood where there's a lot of mansions, a lot of rich people. But yeah, when it comes to food, you can find anything and it's not going to cost you that much to go out.
Yeah.
When it comes to groceries, it's really hard to say a certain number because the prices keep blowing up.
Sure.
We're in an economic crisis, so
Yeah.
inflation is a really big thing. But for now, I'd say that I spend about $150 to $200 a month on groceries, and I eat really well. I mean, like I eat a variety of vegetables and fruits and pasta, rice.
Yeah. And that's US, 150 US. Okay.
And what I would say is that if you're thinking of South America to eat spicy food or like really interesting dishes, you're not going to find it in Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires is very meat and potatoes, and the only condiment that they use is salt.
Wow.
They're not
Okay.
really good at seasoning.
Oh, interesting. So then the empanadas, do they originate this particular empanada you talk about from Argentina?
So if you ask an Argentinian, they're going to say that empanadas are only from Argentina.
Wow. Okay.
If you travel, you know that empanadas were actually an invention by the Spaniards when they were colonizing, so they could eat standing up and moving around. It's actually Inés de Suárez. She was Pedro de Valdivia's wife while they were conquering Chile. And she claimed to make up empanadas in Chile. But you can find empanadas almost anywhere in South and Central America.
Do they have like is there a lot of street food in Buenos Aires that you can?
Not a lot. If you go to a protest, then you can find a lot of street food.
Mm-hmm.
But apart from those events, you can't really find that much street food.
Okay. And what kind of activities going on in Buenos Aires these days? Like, what if you are participating in protests, what
Yes.
are people protesting about?
Well, the last protest that I went to was the gay pride parade. And before that, I went to a lot of feminist protests to make abortion legal. Now it's finally legal, so we're not protesting about that anymore. But we are protesting against feminicides, which are murders done to women because they're women, basically.
Mm-hmm.
There's also been a lot of protests in Chubut, which is in the south of Argentina, because there's a mining project going on that might destroy the environment, basically.
Yeah.
And it was actually a really big protest. And I'm surprised that not a lot of Argentinians here are talking about it, because over 30 people got hurt by the police, which is something very rare, because the police, like I said before, they're like Sesame Street policemen. They're not
Gotcha.
like Chile, where they walk around with huge guns, and if you look at them a certain way, they can arrest you.
Gotcha.
They're really nice. And even in protests, there's not a lot of police activity. They're not gonna shoot water at you. They're not gonna do any smoke bombs or anything in that regards. It's very much a family event. And I mean it literally. There's people that go with their children, with their dogs. I've even seen women breastfeeding while protesting,
Wow.
something that you would never do in, say, the US or Chile.
Yeah. Wow. That's terrific. That's great. So it's almost like a kinder, gentler type of protest in the way that the government reacts and responds.
Definitely. Because also coming from Chile, it's a country where you have to ask for permission from the government to protest.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, but in 2019, right before COVID, we had a big social movement because they raised prices of the public transport system to a price where it would cost you about a fourth of a minimum wage to be able to access it every single day to go to work, for example. And it caused a lot of protests, and it was the first time in a really long time that people were protesting without permission from the government. And the result of that was a lot of people got eye injuries because cops would shoot directly to their eye. A lot of people died. A lot of people got other injuries. And it's something that if it happened in Argentina, people would be extremely pissed off, especially if it happened in Buenos Aires. But in Santiago, that's something that we just live with. When I went to protest over there, first of all, I wasn't allowed to protest until I was of age. And going to protest there, you know that you might not come back. And you know that you have to cover your face, and you know that you might have to run from the police, that you will see very violent things. Well, here, like I said, it's a family event. And there's street food, there's people barbecuing on the street, there's people selling either t-shirts or accessories. Like, it's really amicable. Like, it's a completely different experience.
Wow. So what it sounds like you're pretty actively involved, which is really cool. Can I got that picture that I love that you have, and it's like and it's almost like there's something about that picture. It's like a protest picture in itself. There's so many people today, whenever you speak your mind or whenever you put yourself out there are people that just attack you.
Yes.
Right.
Really angry.
And it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, there's just people that just are out there to want to, they just want to take people down. So, and it's a way to, and I think it's almost a way to keep people quiet and silent and to not speak up, right? Because the more you put yourself out there, the more, that people are going to attack you, and finding a way to be okay with that is not always easy. But I love this picture. I want to share it with our viewers because it's so cool. And the biggest thing that stood out to me about this is where you just say that I love the shirt, fuck haters, but the color and everything, it's such a brilliant picture. How have you experienced haters in your own personal journey? And have you experienced much of that in Argentina?
So now that I'm looking for a job in Argentina, I've experienced a little bit of more hate because there's a lot of prejudice when it comes to Chileans.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so it's a very inclusive city when it comes to sexuality and gender identity. It's not very inclusive when it comes to immigrants unless they're from Europe.
Oh.
There's a lot of blatant racism.
Yeah.
That's like embedded in their culture.
Wow. That's fascinating. And isn't Argentina like the most European South American country?
It's the whitest country in South America.
Okay. Yeah.
So most people here are white, and they don't even see an issue with racism. That conversation hasn't even started, even though there's a big chunk of Asian people, especially, and a big chunk of other South Americans coming here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of discrimination against indigenous people as well. I'm half indigenous, so I've experienced a little bit about it, especially when I read that, because in our Chilean accent, which is like, Chilean accent would be the equivalent of a Scottish accent in English. It's really hard to understand. There's a lot of made up words, and a lot of the words come from indigenous languages.
Yeah.
So I was working as a babysitter for a family, an Italian family, so they were white. And I used the word pichintun, which means little, or little love, for example. It's a term of endearment. And they sat me down and talked to me about it because they didn't want their child to speak incorrectly.
Oh, wow.
So they didn't want me using indigenous words around them, but they would encourage me to speak in English, for example. There's that double standard. Were they
a very affluent family, or?
They were actually my friends. They were young people. They were young parents.
Oh.
And very otherwise cultural. I mean, when it comes to art and music and everything, they were very culturally advanced.
Yeah.
But when it comes to other races, anything that isn't white is considered ugly, it's considered dirty, it's considered less than.
Wow.
They won't acknowledge it. There's actually a lot of words here that come from slave culture.
Yeah.
From when they had Black slaves.
Yeah.
That they still use, and they don't see a problem with using casually. Or a lot of people say the N-word here. A lot of people tend to pull their eyelids when they talk about Asian people to make fun of them.
Yeah.
And they really don't see an issue with calling someone Chinese as a nickname, even though they're not Asian or they're not Chinese.
Right.
And they also tend to call every Asian person Chinese.
Yeah.
And there's actually a lot of Chinese and Korean and Japanese supermarkets here. And they call the supermarket the Chinese.
Okay. So there's a little bit of evolution that needs to take place yet.
Yeah.
Down there.
Yeah, there needs to be a conversation about racism, because it's something that if you ask someone from here, they'll say, no, I'm not racist, because they think racism is just throwing food at someone in public or directly saying you're less than. When
Yeah.
racism is much more, what's the word, nuanced than that.
Mhm. Yeah. Wow. Well,
Yes.
well said. So tell me, how did Argentina, do you know how it became the most Euro country of South America? How did that happen?
Immigration started about the big boom of immigration started in the 30s and the 40s. So during that time, about 40% of the population in Buenos Aires were immigrants. And a lot of it came from the Second World War as well. A lot of people either escaping the Nazis or a lot of Nazis escaping justice.
Mm. Hmm.
So that's where all the Italians and Spaniards here come from.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I remember hearing some stories about some Nazis hiding out in areas of Argentina.
Yes, there's also a really big Dutch population in the south of Argentina, especially. And there's also there's actually a Welsh town where
Mhm.
they speak Welsh, and they all identify as Welsh.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting. How is
Mhm.
uh how is Messi received in Argentina? Is he like a god?
Yeah, everybody loves him. He has no issues. He's fine
Yeah.
that I know of. Yeah, football is really important here. And I'd say that the moments where they get the most racist is when Argentina plays a country like Brazil, where most of the players are Black.
Yeah.
And that's when they get aggressively racist.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes it's more passive aggressive,
Yeah.
but during football games against Black players, they get openly and aggressively racist.
Okay. Wow. So you really do experience that and feel that living in Argentina and
Yes.
notice it.
Yes.
It's very noticeable.
I'd say that unless you're white, you're gonna notice it right away.
Wow.
Just with
Okay.
the language they use and how they perceive other races.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us, like, let's move on to the cost of like an apartment. So like somebody who's, a digital nomad. Now there's this guy that I interviewed, real cool guy, and he lives in Colombia, and he was going to move, and he works through his computer. His job is
Mhm.
through his computer, and he's bouncing all over, and he was going to spend, he said he was going to go down to live in Buenos Aires. So
Mhm.
how would he find an apartment, and what are apartments going for in a decent neighborhood, like some of the neighborhoods that you're talking about?
Yeah,
Um,
so it really depends on where you find the apartment. If you find it through what's called a dueño directo or a direct owner, then it's
uh-huh.
going to be a little bit cheaper. If you find it through Airbnb, it's going to be a little bit more expensive. But
Sure.
then Airbnb, you know what you're getting, and there's more of a quality control going on. I say if you just go for it with an apartment with a direct owner, you might not know what you get.
Yeah.
Especially now that showings are way more limited because of COVID.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, but right now I live in a really nice one studio apartment. I live with my dog, and there's a pool upstairs. It's not a big pool, it's more of a overvalued bathtub. But
Yeah.
but it goes for about $450, which is not
Okay.
a lot
Yeah.
considering that it's in a really nice neighborhood, and it has a pool, and um, it's a nice studio apartment.
Hmm.
You can definitely find a 1-bedroom apartment for a similar price. Um, and if you get it unfurnished, then it's even cheaper. So I'd say if you're making dollars, then you're set. You can live a very luxurious life if you're earning in dollars. If you're earning in Argentine pesos, it's going to be way more difficult because of
Sure.
inflation and stuff. But if you're a digital nomad and you're living off of dollars, then you're set. You're completely set.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking, so the apartment that you're talking about with about 450 is that comes furnished.
Yes.
You can get them with beds and a sofa
Mhm.
or, okay.
Yeah, I
Do
have
they-
a bed, a sofa, and a big wardrobe. So,
Okay.
and the
So,
whole kitchen is complete.
all right. So so a typical apartment you can find in Buenos Aires for about 450.
Yes. And one thing to take notice of is that since home appliances are really expensive here, most homes won't have a microwave. So
Mm,
if you depend on the microwave, I'd say get one where you're from because it might be cheaper. Because
gotcha.
home appliances and technology in general, so cell phones, game consoles, everything is super expensive.
Mm. Do you guys have anything like Amazon there? Like everybody orders online now. We get it delivered right to the house.
We have a thing called Mercado Libre. We don't have Amazon.
Okay.
And to order things from outside the country is almost impossible because not only will you get charged a bunch of money on taxes, like at least $100 in taxes, you will also have to go to customs and waiting line, and maybe they'll give you your package, maybe not.
Okay.
So sending stuff from outside of Argentina to Argentina and from Argentina elsewhere, it's really complicated.
Gotcha.
But you can order stuff online here. There's also a lot of small businesses, which I personally love because I love shopping, I love fashion, and I love beauty. And you can find a lot of small businesses owned by women or owned by minorities that either sell through Instagram or they have their own online shops. And it's all slow fashion, and it's all handmade, and it's pretty good quality for what you're paying.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What are the utilities for your apartment? Like water, electric?
So water is completely free.
Okay.
And everything else I'm not sure of because it's included in the 450 that I pay.
Wow. So electric, and do you have air conditioning there?
Yes.
Okay. And is heat included as well?
Yeah.
Wow. So that's a great deal.
Yes.
That's a great deal. All right. What is like, do you pay for Wi-Fi there?
No, it's also included in the 450.
So Wi-Fi comes with the building.
Though Wi-Fi in Argentina is not really good quality. So you best keep that in mind as well, that maybe you'll have to update your Wi-Fi service or something because it's not the best. And there's also a lot of power outages, especially during thunderstorms or
Yeah.
heat waves.
Okay.
So that's something to take in account for.
Okay. And Wi-Fi is okay. So you said water you have to pay for?
No, it's completely free.
That's free. Okay. And electric and all that. Okay. How about cell phone? What does a cell phone cost?
So a cell phone, like the device itself, is going to be really expensive here.
Yeah.
It's going to be at least like I got my iPhone 11 for about $600,
Mhm.
I think.
Yeah. That's about the price here as well.
Yeah, but translated to Argentine pesos is a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like
Exactly.
I said, if you're earning in dollars, it's not that expensive.
Sure.
But especially if you're getting money through Western Union, this is a life hack that I learned. The exchange rate for Western Union is even better than the dollar blue, or I don't know what it's called.
Mhm.
It's really, really good. It's almost double the money that you would get anywhere else.
Oh, okay.
Um, and the cell phone service, it's really cheap, and you can get a SIM card in almost any corner store. And I pay about maybe $10 a month.
Wow. Does that give you like unlimited like data or a certain number
Not
of data?
unlimited, but it gives you a lot of data.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So, I mean, like, if you really break it down, you're talking about like 150 in groceries.
Mhm.
I mean, it sounds like you have a really nice place with a pool that's included, and
Yeah.
all the amenities are practically included there. So that's 450. Groceries, let's say another 150, so that's 600.
Mhm.
And what would you say you pay per month, like entertainment, like going out with your friends, going
So,
out to dinner, going to a movie, like for per month, maybe taking a taxi or jumping in the train, what do you pay for that?
so the public transport is really, really cheap. I'm talking 20 cents a ride.
Okay.
Um, and it works really good. The connectivity is really good. You can get anywhere using public transport. Usually you can only take one bus or get on the subway and you can get places really easily.
Mm-hmm.
But if you choose to take an Uber or take a taxi, it's also fairly cheap compared to other countries. I would say, like, the other day I came back from the airport and it was about a 20-minute ride and I paid $6.
Okay. Very affordable, the
Very,
transportation.
very affordable. So also, like, going out at night is really affordable because most places don't ask you for an entry fee.
Yeah. So
They don't.
per month, what do you pay for transportation? If you guesstimated.
Uh, so it's tough because right now during COVID season, I'm not really going out that much.
Yeah.
But before that, I would say like $10 to $15 a month.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I would go out every single weekend, at least twice.
Okay. So then entertainment wise, like movies, theater,
So
bars.
for movies, it's about, if you go to a theater in a fancier neighborhood like Recoleta, it might be like $7 per person
Okay.
for a movie ticket. But if you go to older movie theaters, especially there's one downtown called Gaumont. That place, you only pay 50 cents for a movie.
What is it called?
Gaumont, Gaumont.
Gaumont. What does that mean?
I think it's a last name.
Gaumont. Okay. And that's a movie theater in Buenos Aires.
Yeah, and for theater, you can find a place for about, from completely free, like only tips, to fancier, more established functions that would be about $10 to $15 as well. Or if it's someone from other countries, like right now I'm planning to go to a drag show with international drag queens. It's going to be about $35-$40.
Okay.
The
So if you
places,
had to break it down, your typical, like a typical person's monthly entertainment, how much do you think you pay for all of the activities you do? If you add
mm,
them all up, would you say do you spend more than 100, 150 a month?
I would say 100 to 150 if you're
Okay.
going constantly. But also there's so many free things to do. Like all the museums are either completely free or only $1 to get in.
Mm-hmm.
The gardens are also almost all of them free. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're into nature and stuff, you can still go to nature like
Yeah.
places. Um, so there's a wide variety of things to do, and there's a lot of free events that the city organizes, like the night of the museums or the night of the gardens or the night of music, where you can go places for free.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what the population is in Buenos Aires?
Oh, I have no idea. It's a lot of people. It's a really big city.
Yeah, I'm gonna Google that real quick here.
Yeah.
Let me see here. That's the great thing, isn't it? 2021.
Acknowledge it, a touch of a button.
So wow, 15 million. So
Yes.
there's a lot of people there.
Mhm.
There's a lot of people in Buenos Aires. That's a big city.
Yes.
How is the traffic and the air quality and all that
Is compared to Chile, compared to Santiago. In Santiago, we have a big air quality problem because we're surrounded by mountains.
Yeah.
So it's in a hole in the middle, and
Yeah.
air just stays clogged there. So in Santiago, you would get days where you're not allowed to go outside, or you're not allowed to drive, depending on your ID number.
Mm-hmm.
But here the air quality is really good because it has a river that transforms into the ocean, and so the air quality is really good, and it's also a really windy city.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to transportation and traffic, it depends at what time. If it's really early in the morning, say like office hours, like getting to the office might be a little bit difficult, and coming back at say 5 or 4:30 might be a little bit difficult. Also, people here drive really recklessly, so I wouldn't recommend driving here.
Mm-hmm.
Only if it's absolutely necessary to get an Uber or a taxi. But in general, if you can walk or bike somewhere, I would recommend that, because people are really reckless drivers.
Okay. Yeah. Are there a lot of scooters there? Motorcycles and scooters?
Yeah. Especially with the delivery service, like delivery services have had a big growth because of the pandemic. So now you can see a lot of motorbikes and a lot of bikes and a lot of scooters, a lot of those electric scooters that are really popular right now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, those are becoming popular all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
even here. All right. So we covered. So right now, I mean, even with all of what you shared, you can live under $1,000 a month pretty comfortably in Buenos Aires, which is one of the most spectacular cities in the world. Now, if you wanted to live outside of Buenos Aires, you could probably live for nothing, practically. You know what I mean? If you wanted to get outside of the big city where everybody wants to be, you could probably find real estate and apartments for even a lot cheaper, I would imagine.
Yes. It depends, because like in the greater Buenos Aires, because there's like the Buenos Aires area, and then there's the Buenos Aires city. It might depend on the area. Like I think Pilar is a little bit expensive. But there's other places that are really cheap.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be able to tell you an exact number.
What is that one you said that's really expensive? Pilar?
Mm-hmm.
How do you spell?
P-I-L-A-R. P-I-L-A-R.
Oh, Pilar. Okay. Pilar. Okay. And that's a neighborhood.
Yes.
Okay. And so, are there any other areas that you're familiar with in Argentina where people that are moving or considering moving to Argentina could find these, like a city or a destination that's really fascinating, interesting? It's a developing, maybe like a really artsy city or a bohemian kind of feel or vibe or whatever, but something that's special. Are there any places like that in Argentina?
Yes. So in the south, there's Bariloche, which is a beautiful town, and there's amazing chocolate.
Oh,
I went there as a kid. So
Isabella, spell the name of that town.
Bariloche.
Okay. Bariloche.
Yes.
So that's a very cool town.
Yes, and there's a lot of skiing over there in the winter time. So if you're into winter sports, you can go there in the winter. And then there's Mendoza, which is also very artsy. And I remember when I was younger, Clothing is a little bit cheaper here, and books are way, way cheaper here compared to Chile because we have one of the highest taxes for books in the world.
Yeah.
Obviously, a symptom from the dictatorship where knowledge was censored and kept away from the masses. People would come to Mendoza for a weekend or something as like a quinceañera gift or a sweet 16 gift, or like just a little trip because it's really easy to go from Santiago to Mendoza. So yeah, I'd say that those places I've been to. Also, Mar del Plata is also a really nice beach town. The beach itself is not the nicest. If you're really like snobbish about beaches, it's not like say Cancun or somewhere in Mexico, but it's a really nice city, and you can go to a nice hotel for not that much.
Yeah, and that's Mar del Plata.
Mar del Plata.
Mar del Plata.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's the beach town.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else, Isabella, that we didn't cover you want to share about Argentina?
So I work a lot with children. And I've noticed that children here are way more outgoing than in other places. Parents here are very loose when it comes to rules. So they don't have bedtimes. People stay out with their kids until 3 a.m. if they want to. They bring kids to the bars. So if you're not to kids, I'm sorry, but you're gonna see them everywhere.
Yeah.
They also let their kids dye their hair and explore their identities. So that's really nice. Also, one more thing that's about the culture here. People are always late. If you're very punctual, if you get annoyed by people that are late, this is not the place for you because people will be 45 minutes late and call it on time.
Ah, okay.
And I
Wow.
think that it's just cultural. If you complain about it, you'll end up being chastised as like an uptight bitch.
Yeah, or somebody who's, especially coming from somewhere else, the arrogance, right? This is the way it is here. So that,
I mean, time for a date, I waited 2 hours for the guy.
oh,
and
really?
he did apologize. Yes.
Oh, wow.
And he kept saying,
did you go out with him again?
No.
No.
Absolutely not.
That's a long wait. No, I would kick it to the curb, man, and move on.
Yeah, no. And the dating scene here, if you're a woman, it's a little bit difficult.
I think dating scenes everywhere, are difficult. Yeah. It's just hard,
Yeah, but if you're used to like very gentlemanly guys, here you probably won't find that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's too, you're young, you're in your 20s, and a lot of times just, young men, a lot of times. And I just, speaking from experience, a lot of my friends and we were just kind of jerks. You didn't really think.
Yeah, no, but even older guys. I've had friends that dated guys in their 40s, even though they're in their early 30s or in their 20s, and they're still awful.
Huh.
They're still very very dismissive. Like the culture is to be like the most unattached person in a relationship wins here. So like you have to not show any interest and be very aloof when it comes to dating, because that's just the culture here. Otherwise you're gonna be called uptight, a bitch, too much, or like high maintenance. So even asking a guy to meet you at a certain time might be considered too much.
Sure.
Guys think that you're in love with them instantly. So if you're like slightly nicer to them than to other people, they're going to be like, whoa.
Right.
Slow down.
Well, that's really interesting because the guys probably feel pressure too. Like the guys are like going, okay, so I told her that I'd meet her at 8:00, but if I show up before 8, she's not going to like me because it shows that I'm too needy. So I need to
Yes.
show up at like 8:30.
Yeah,
I
there's
gotta play that game.
there's constantly these little games of who's the most uninterested.
Wow. Yeah, well, I don't envy you, man. That's a tough world to be in, but
Yeah, no, right now I'm dating an American and it's completely changed my life.
wow. So the American is what brought this person down there to Argentina? Is he
We actually met online, so he's never been to Argentina.
not yet? Okay, so you have an online relationship yet?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Well, it looks like we covered pretty much everything. The last, question I just wanted to ask you is, what do you love the most about your choice of living in Argentina?
I'd say two things: the ice cream and the fact that you can get ice cream at even ungodly hours like 1 a.m.
That's great.
So if you're going through a sad period in your life or a breakup or something, it's the best place because you can get ice cream at any time of the day or night.
Wow.
And
Okay.
the second thing would be the freedom I feel as a woman. I feel like I can move freely. I can go places. I can speak for myself. I can be politically or as little politically involved as I want. And yeah, you can enjoy culture and art and being outside and relating to people and making female friendships a lot more here than in other South American places.
So you feel respected as a woman in Argentina, particularly Buenos Aires. And that's so all of the young women digital nomads out there take that. Did you just hear what Isabella said? That Argentina is your place because you are going to be respected and honored for being a woman, right? Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, well, Isabella Michea, thank you so much. I mean, you're absolutely terrific. Thank you so much for sharing your
Thank you
journey.
for having me.
And all of this information has been brilliant and very thoughtful. So thank you again for my, accepting my invitation. This is fantastic.
Thank you for inviting me. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, it's been great. So, well, have a great rest of the evening, and let's stay in touch through Facebook, and hopefully I'll make it down to Argentina and visit.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, hasta luego. Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.